We're going to talk about a historic Pennsylvania camp and a well-known society hangout in its heyday. It'll be a story of glory of how elegant a camp became as a social lodge before the tumble. The camp was located within state forests of Pennsylvania. An original camp was erected in 1911, which basically looked like a traditional kind of camp, but it was 2 stories high. This Rod and Gun Club decided to take it up a step, and soon it was improved upon in a big way. Thanks for joining us for a quick history video at Timber Adventures, and please give us a like and a subscribe for more content. The big improvement came when the camp was torn down and the wood and supplies were used to build a new and improved lodge. This was built in 1920. The camp was a large stone structure, and those stones were very precise in their construction and the way they were placed, as it was overseen by several architects that were brought in, quote, from the city, unquote. The stones were locally quarried from many of the outcroppings that surrounded the camp area. The lodge had a huge wraparound porch and would have offered some beautiful views in all directions. Looking out to the back at the game forest, which would have been very thick pines, to the west, it looked out upon the roadway and across to a large dam that was built as part of the camp. There was also a lovely spring to the south on a hillside, and there's some matching stone structures that still lie in the thickened woods that are now being overgrown in that area. There was also a small golf putting area added for those members who chose to try their hand at golf. The inside layout was bunkhouse on the second and third or the attic floor, with several bathrooms found on the second floor. The kitchen was said to be so nice that it eventually would be used as a restaurant, with the same fixtures being used over 50 years later. The bottom dwelling had a large open area where people would mingle, and even some days dedicated to dance. In corners of these areas, there were bookshelves for those readers who could choose to pick a title and go out on the porch for a read. Even though the lodge was supplied with electricity, a former keeper told a newspaper that he had a responsibility to Mr. Miller to keep some lamps lit in areas for, quote, a wood-like ambience, unquote. This keeper also had a small building where he was housed and lived on the property to the northeast of the main building. He would also assist with maintaining, quote, dam needs and cooking. The original owners constructed an impoundment dam across the street that was highlighted by 2 large pillars. The area was described as a fisherman's dream, with large areas to walk around and fish. It was not a deep impoundment area, but, quote, had some very sporty fish for a variety of anglers, unquote. That area is now a wetlands marsh that is a prime ecosystem for some very unique plants that are very rare to the PA wilds. By 1922, there were over 80 members of the club. I have access to an actual correspondence from secretary and director at the camp, Irvine Miller, for members. The letter is unique, with the body of the letter in the center and all the members' names and cities of residence lining both sides. Here's a little bit of the letter, written on October 31st, 1922. It says, members, you have had the custom to only use the camp in deer season. We want you to use it all year round with guests. Quote, they are at liberty to entertain guests at any time during the year except the first 7 days of the deer season, and it's members only then, unquote. They go on to encourage use of other game seasons and state, quote, there will be ample accommodations for both members and their guests, unquote. 1922 was early in the life of this newer camp, and basically this is when the life of the party started happening. This Pennsylvania historic camp wanted to offer the game and fishing for hunters and the social atmosphere as well. The 1920s were the height of the popularity of the camp for the local elite members. It must have been the Gatsby environment with some dancing, some drinking, and music all the time. There would be family picnics by day in the summer, with the building coming alive towards evening. It thrived on into the mid-30s, till the collapse of the economies and the hard economic times. The camp, or mansion as it was later referred to, since it really had bumped up the standards from a traditional camp. The mansion was sold at a tax auction in 1935. It became victim of the hard times. After the auction, 5 individuals were trustees, and they were appointed to manage the land, and it was eventually leased to a moose club in 1963. They occupied and used the facility for 10 years until 1973, when the lodge was sold at an auction to a pair of brothers. Those brothers then turned the lodge into a restaurant. Unfortunately, the restaurant chapter only lasted about a year and a half before a fire claimed the camp in 1974. The land and surrounding acreage remains in the family name to this day. Eventually, beavers moved into the area, constructed a dam that overflowed the foundation, the fountain, and the driveway area. What remains is nothing more than wetlands. The area is currently private property and closed to the public. Not much remains to be seen anyway, as nature is slowly reclaiming the land. I would like to say that some of my information came from several articles from 2 local newspapers in the area. A book, Hunting Camps of the Allegheny Plateau, was also used for a reference. There was also a paragraph mentioning this particular historic camp in an issue of Sports Afield magazine from the late 1920s. In the end, the camp is gone. Some ruins remain, and the dam impoundment has become a diverse ecosystem in itself. The area thrives under Mother Nature once again.